All right, here we go with episode 95 of Return to Authenticity. And this week's guest, Felix Boecker. This was a fun conversation. Felix is a real easygoing guy. He's got a real kind of comfortable and natural way of having a conversation. So he and I really chopped it up and we had a lot of fun. We have a lot of things in common. Felix has got German heritage. Obviously, that's not in common. And it was just interesting to me to see how much we did have in common, even though we come from very different walks of life. He's an athlete. He grew up dreaming of being a fighter pilot as I did. And maybe a whole bunch of people listening grew up wanting to be a fighter pilot. Maybe it's like being a fireman or a cop or a military guy or whatever. But certainly I had that dream. Felix shared that dream. We talk a bit about that. And he ends up going into becoming a surgeon of all things, right? So he goes through this tremendous amount of schooling and learning to become a surgeon, and then not just any surgeon, but a trauma surgeon. And he does that, goes through all that training, takes him, almost 2 decades or a decade and a half to get through all of that work. And he's doing the work and he realizes he just doesn't seem to be his thing. And man, when you've invested that much time, money, and energy, the likelihood is you're just going to keep pressing forward. And for Felix, he thought, this just isn't what I'm going to do for the rest of my career. And he had overcome a lot of challenges in his life, and he thought, I can overcome this as well. And so he decides to step out of this role as a trauma surgeon and look to help others uncover what their purpose and mission on this earth is. And so he becomes a coach, and now he's coaching doctors. If you'll follow the links to Felix, he's real active on LinkedIn, so you can really keep up with his story. And he's doing just a tremendous amount of work helping others sort through their trauma and their challenging situations to find a new life on the other side of that. So a really, really fun guy, really good dude. I think you're going to love this conversation and episode 95 and Felix Boecker. Welcome to the Return to Authenticity podcast, where we hear inspiring and courageous stories of people who made bold pivots in their lives toward their more authentic selves, that version of themselves they were born to be or they had to find after life threw them a major curveball. I'm your host, Eric Sardina. Welcome and stand by. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Felix Boecker. Felix is familiar with overcoming challenging situations. He trained to be a trauma surgeon for 14 years before learning that it simply didn't inspire or motivate him. He felt empty inside. Felix had overcome difficulties before, having dealt with mental health disorders and substance abuse in his own family, including his own suicidal thoughts and ideations. Only working with a coach helped Felix find his way through. So he recently decided to step out of healthcare to become a coach, helping others find meaning and purpose in life. And with that, Felix Boecker, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eric. This is so exciting. It's been a while since I've been a guest on a podcast, so
and you run your
excited
own,
to be
so
here.
It's a little different when you're on the other side of the mic, right? So it's I can appreciate that feeling. I've done far more hosting than guesting, and when I'm a guest, it is a little bit different.
Yeah, sure is. So,
sure.
We'll take the lead, and
man,
I'm happy to share anything you want to share with the audience.
Thrilled to have you on the show and excited to hear your story. So let's start as we normally do and talk a bit about your influences growing up, childhood, where you grew up, and what that looked like.
Yeah, so grew up in Germany, born and raised in Germany, actually. Straight up German. I'm not military related, although I joined the Air Force later. Spent my time there for 15 years. I was 15 and a half when we moved to Florida. So that was probably the first real struggle in my life, packing up everything. And 15 is a wonderful age to move. Definitely when you move different countries where you speak different languages. So
it's crazy.
That was, I know, right? It's crazy. But the only good thing was I was pretty much spot on 15 and a half when we stepped off the plane. And in Florida, you had to be 16 to get your license, but you needed 6 months of a learner's permit. So pretty much my first stop when I stepped off the plane was the DMV to get my learner's permit. So I was able to start driving pretty much right away, which was awesome.
Were you able to drive in Germany? Can you drive in Germany before that age? Had you already been driving or no?
No, I haven't. So in Germany, at 18, you have to take really you have to take lessons first, and it's almost a year-long process to get a license. So they're pretty strict and pretty regulated. Unlike here in the States, where you can just say, "All right, go drive," learn in a parking lot somewhere, how to parallel park and whatnot.
Right.
No, they're pretty strict. Even if you, let's say you have to do like an uphill start with a manual transmission, you can't roll backwards when you do that. So they're very strict. They're in their driving education and what they require of their drivers. So no, I was not driving in Germany. So that was kind of exciting for me when we came here to the States. But yeah, so I was 15. I left all my friends behind, everything I knew, all my hobbies essentially. And I was thrown into a college prep school here in the States, which was funny because I didn't even know what college even was. So thrown into a pretty rigorous school program with my, I had enough English in Germany to get around. I could go to the grocery store and order food and whatnot. But really to go to a college prep school was different. And I remember my school assignment for the summer reading, and the assignment was George Orwell's 1984. And we had to write a 6-page reflection essay. And I remember I was still doing this in Germany, just from the timeline of events. So I was reading the book in Germany and starting to write my 6-page essay while still in Germany. I didn't finish it till we got to the States. But what I didn't know was how to write an essay. I didn't know that a 6-page reflection essay for any school assignment meant double spaced. So essentially I wrote 12 pages because it was all single spaced. And there were just so many little nuances that I still remember. Quotation marks, for example, in Germany start at the bottom of the line and end on the top, whereas here they're both on the top. So the formatting was unfamiliar to even my teachers, and they're like, "What are you doing?" My teacher actually never gave that essay back to me. She said, "You don't want to see what you got on this essay." But that teacher was actually phenomenal when it really comes to teachers. Tracy Harrison, I mean, she was absolutely phenomenal. And we read, the first book we read was A House on Mango Street. And I remember getting that essay back and I got a D- on it. And the only reason I didn't fail was because she felt bad for me. She's like, I can't give you 2 Fs in a row. But she really took me like under her wing, and we spent hours after school for the next book, which was Henderson the Rain King. And you could tell, like, I still remember this from like 1999, right? These things are so like core memories to me. But we spent so much time after school together in like those first 2 months for me to work on my English, to see what I really was supposed to get at from the book and what my essays were really supposed to be about and how they were supposed to be written. And then on my Henderson the Rain King essay, I got an A-. And pretty much since then, I aced all my English assignments. I even went as far as I almost got an English degree in college. I was 3 classes shy of an English degree in college even. So that she really changed my life at that time. And that was not easy work, dealing with, a whole different culture, a whole different language, and going at it from scratch almost. So that was my first step. My first foray here in the United States was dealing with the college prep school and the language, and also trying to fit in socially. I left all the friends that I had in Germany that I've been with since kindergarten behind. And I joined a group here that for the most part had been together since kindergarten. And I feel like to this day, I still really wasn't able to fit in and make deep connections with anybody. And I'm still in contact with one person from high school fairly regularly. Just a funny enough story. He now works for Edward Jones and is my financial advisor. It's just funny how that turns out.
Right.
And I'm still in contact with one of my friends from Germany. We still chat every once in a while about our local soccer team and how they're doing. But outside of that, from high school, I really have little to no connections. Sure, we're mostly friends on Facebook, but we rarely ever talk. So that was definitely, I would say, the first big hurdle is just moving when I was 15.
What caused you to move? Was it a job situation for your parents, or what brought you to the States?
I can't tell you that I have a good answer for that question. I think it was really just because part of the influence that I know of was my mother. When she was 18, 19, 20 or so, she had seen a psychic and that psychic had told her that she would move across a large body of water a few more times in her life. Or 2 more times, I should say, specifically 2 more times. And so she essentially just wanted to make that prophecy become a reality. And so she thought that was just the place to be. Honestly, it was, I think in retrospect, looking at it now with what I know now as a 40-year-old, with all the experience that I've had since, I think it was a dumb move, because my dad left. He had a fairly good job working for IBM, and he left that early. Which means he didn't get a pension. He didn't get his retirement. He got just a bunch of stock options. And, those only last so long. So it was, I think in retrospect, a dumb move, because he was, I think, 5 years away from retirement at the time. Oh, so wow. If we had stayed in Germany 5 more years, he would have been set for the rest of his life, especially in Germany. So I honestly don't know. I don't think that I ever will know, because my parents have since moved back to Germany. Because the United States were too expensive for them.
Really?
And yeah, so again, my dad was almost 5 years away from retirement when we moved, and then so they're older, and health insurance premiums were just unsustainable when you have barely any income.
Yeah.
So they moved back to Germany to drive that cost of living down, for the most part, which was, again, I think partially motivated by that psychic prophecy that my mom had received 40 years ago that said, 50 years ago now, that said she would move across a large body of water 2 more times in her life.
Right.
I honestly, I wish I had a better answer. I really don't know. That said, for me personally, it was awesome. It was actually exactly what I needed at that point in my life. Again, in retrospect, because in Germany, I would say I was a terrible student. I mean, I was like a straight C student, didn't care about school. All I wanted to do was play video games and play soccer with my friends after school. I was really struggling in school, and I was starting to realize that. I was starting to get, sort of open and conscious about the idea that I was not doing well in school. And so what ended up happening is after 8th grade, at the time, we had the option of either following a language path or a science path. And I decided for the language path, which would give me a year of Latin. And the whole idea in my mind was my German sucks, and I needed to improve that. There is so many grammar rules in German. It's really hard to comprehend. And so the same thing is obviously the case in Latin. And so my thought was, well, first of all, we're going to move to another country in a year anyway. So it doesn't really matter which path I choose. Probably not. But I know my language is going to have an impact on me for the rest of my life. And I don't know German, my first language, really well. There's a lot of grammar that I'm missing that I don't understand. The same thing happened at French. I mean, I had 3 years of French while I was in school in Germany, and I couldn't tell you anything about that nowadays because I was, again, just not paying attention, didn't care for it. And so I saw an opportunity for me to take Latin as a second language at the time, as an opportunity for me to improve my grammatical understanding of German, maybe French, and then also ideally improve my English because I was in that language track now instead of the science track. So that ultimately was the first change that I sort of had at the time when I was 14. But that was the stepping stone for me then to really excel here in the United States, because this was now, I came here with a blank slate. I started from scratch. So now I could really build myself up from scratch. So what helped me here was the level of math that I was at in Germany was about a year or two ahead where I was placed here in the United States. And so my math classes were really easy. I started taking Spanish, which came actually relatively easy to me. I kept on with the Latin, and obviously my English we already talked about. I started to improve that quite dramatically as well. So I had that opportunity for a completely fresh start, a radical change, right? Because we moved countries. But that radical change allowed me to completely reset myself. It allowed me an opportunity to redefine who I am, because nobody knew who I was, right? Yeah. Everybody just knew who I am. And so I could present myself as a completely different person, which allowed me new opportunities and new growth. And so, again, in retrospect, it was a fantastic move for me. I don't know where I would be at nowadays if I had stayed in school in Germany. Definitely not doing what I'm doing now.
Really?
I definitely would not have had the experiences that I've had if we had stayed there. Probably would be some, middle manager grinding away at a 9 to 5, doing some menial tasks. That's all I would be doing. So no, I think, again, in retrospect, it was the right thing for me, even though it was really, really hard at the time.
Yeah, it's a great story, man. And what's interesting is I experienced not what you did, but something similar in that moving from upstate, kind of Western New York, Buffalo area to Texas as a 12, 13-year old. And when I was in Buffalo, I had a big group of friends and, mostly was kind of a average to below average student and just could get by on being athletic and friendly and, have my friends. And when I came to Texas, man, I was alone. And so really had to become a different person. I didn't have that big group of friends. I didn't have the connections. And I sort of said, I remember doing terribly in my first year in school here, which would have been seventh grade. And I remember my dad asking me, like, you got C's, which means you passed, but what are you really capable of? Like, maybe try to see what you could accomplish instead of just trying to get by. And I remember sort of taking that as a challenge and then, kind of transformed into a kind of an A student and did that and really became, I think about you triggered of just a bunch of thoughts there of that. I remember having similar thinking of if we hadn't moved, I think I would have been a very different person than I ultimately became as a teenager and then a young adult and certainly as an adult now. Then had I stayed in a very different environment. And I can't imagine that when I think about you moving from a place where it's an entirely different country, different language, and then to go from Germany, which I picture as sort of green and rainy and cool, to Florida, which is like hot, tropical, sunshine. I don't know that you could have picked a different place to land in other than another planet, right? It had to be extremely jarring. Did you have siblings that came with you, or is just your mom and dad and you, or what was your support group
Yeah,
like?
no, I have a younger brother. Although he took a very different path through life than I did. But yeah, my brother is about 3 years younger than me. So it
Okay.
was the four of us that came, and
What
I never
year
met my
was this?
grandfathers. 1999.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, a good 20.
Celebrated Y2K here in the States.
Right on. Do you remember, did you play sports? Were you like into the water sports stuff or beach? What was kind of your thing as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, Sunshine Beach and palm trees are my jam. Anyways, I love
Okay.
that, which makes you wonder why and how I ended up in Ohio. But uh, the big thing for me at the time, and still to this day, is soccer. The interesting story there is when I was in Germany and playing with my friends, we were just kicking the ball about. We just, played after school. Whoever showed up, showed up. We didn't have a field. We didn't have teams. We just made it up on the spot.
Yeah.
The goals were all run down and they were never maintained, but they served a purpose for the game, and we just had fun. And that was awesome. And I wanted to do that again here in the States, but it was a college prep school, relatively small. My graduating class was only 48 students. Just put that in perspective.
Yeah.
So when I started here in 10th grade, the rules of the school were that if you're in 10th grade, 10, 11, 12, you have to be on the varsity team. My skills should have put me on the junior varsity team at best. And it was really hard to find anybody who would want to just kick the ball about after school. And a lot of it, I think, is also the communication is different. The distances are vast. It was like a 25-minute drive to school every day.
Yeah.
Whereas in Germany, it was like a 15, 20-minute walk.
Right.
And, even going to the soccer field in Germany, it was like about 6, 7, 8-minute walk for me. And we had two different fields to choose from versus here. If I wanted to play soccer after school with anybody, again, it's a 20, 25-minute drive.
Yeah.
So it just very different to connect with that. So I was placed on the varsity team, even though I didn't have the skills for that at all. So essentially the coach essentially just put me in as a way to, like I recorded the plays that the team made on the field so we could strategize about player choices and team choices for future games. So I ended up playing more of a little bit more of a role with the coaching team than I did with the players almost, because I definitely and I can absolutely admit to that I was not having the skill and the quality that they required for the varsity team. Our varsity team won the state championship several years. Both before I got there and since. So they're an incredibly good team, and I definitely don't have the skill. So it's something where I would have felt bad to be on the pitch anyways, even though I was itching to play. But yeah, so I at least got a little bit of my soccer kick out of the way with the practices we had and the summer camps. But yeah, it was definitely very different because it's much stricter, and there was running involved, and we really was more of a team, like a professional team that we trained as opposed to just the fun of kicking the ball about and hanging out with your friends.
Yeah. And I remember as well playing a lot of just, sandlot ball, what we would call sandlot ball, whether it was baseball or soccer or football, just go to the vacant lot down the block and come up with a game. Right. And yet I don't see that anymore really in children's athletics. It seems like it very quickly, you got to decide, is my kid going to be a soccer player? Then they got to get into select ball and they got to start traveling and they got to start doing all this stuff. And we spend tons of money, and I think tennis is the same, and football I think is the same. You've got private coaches teaching quarterbacks how to be quarterbacks when they're, barely teenagers and so forth. And sports has become like this thing that is it's almost like minor professional sports, even as young kids almost have to, if they want to play. They want to play at all. If they're like, no, I'm not really into that, there's no vacant lot ball getting played, right? They almost just like, you're going to be a band kid, I guess, or an art kid or something else. You can't be a sports kid if you're not going to go all in on that, which I think is really unfortunate. And it not only does it limit participation, it limits creativity. I mean, and the ability to kind of manage and lead each other. And because there were no coaches, right? You would pick teams. You would have kind of a leader that day, and sometimes a consistent leader that would say, all right, this is what we're going to do today, or this is how we're going to play. But it really encouraged the kids to kind of self-teach, self-manage, self-everything. And now it's not, man, they show up like pros, right? Giant bags of gear, and they got coaches telling them exactly where to be, where to go, what to do. And it's like, man, the love of sport has sort of changed. And I think, that's my perspective, anyway, looking at it. But
look, I absolutely agree with that perspective. My kids, I have two daughters, and they both participated in like a youth soccer academy, a camp, group, whatever, when they were about 5-6 years old. And I was really upset about that because they needed jerseys, both light and dark colors. They had, pitches, they had refs, they have coaches. And I was like, these guys don't even know the game. Yeah. Let them just have fun. Put a ball in there, make up some goals, and just let them play. Let them have fun. Let them enjoy the game, because what you're doing right now is you're killing the joy of the game from these kids by putting all these rules and these other things in there. They don't need jerseys. They, just give them a ball. Let them have fun.
Right. Yep. All right. So, very good. So now you as you come up through school, obviously now you're talking about you become a much better student, and and so at what point do you start to think about what you're going to do in college or going off to college? You're in a prep school. So obviously there are achieving kids in that school that are thinking 100% I'm going to college. And so are you kind of getting caught up in that, or what's the mindset as you start to kind of think about school after high school?
Yeah, no, that's a terrific question. Going through that school, there was never a question from anybody that anybody would not go on to college. Everybody was going to college. And I would say I didn't even know what college was until I got to college. I went through the college applications for the most part because everyone else went through college applications. And I was going through the process. And I don't even know what I'm applying for here. I don't know what I'm doing. And I ultimately, I remember I applied to the University of Miami for my undergraduate degrees only because everyone else in my class was applying to the University of Miami. I knew nothing about the school. And so I applied, I got accepted, and they invited all the accepted students for a tour of the campus. And I hadn't accepted yet at the time. They had accepted me, but I hadn't accepted the invitation yet. So we went down there and we toured the campus, and I loved the campus. I was like, this is cool. I can see myself here. And then Donna Shalala was the president of the university at the time still, who was the Secretary for Health and Human Services under Bill Clinton. And she was an incredible powerhouse, very short lady. But when she gave her introductory talk, I was thinking, wow, this is a powerful woman. I want to be in her vicinity. And that's what made me decide to go to the University of Miami. It ended up being an expensive choice. I'm still paying for it to this day. But,
that's private school, right? University of Miami private?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. But that's ultimately what made me decide on going to the University of Miami. And then, obviously, what major do I choose? Everybody who goes pre-med, for the most part, chose biology at the time. I would say 80% of pre-med students chose biology as their major. Pre-med was not a major that the university offered. It was just a sort of a track where there's certain classes you had to meet, but it wasn't a degree or anything else. It was just kind of a loose-fitting arrangement. And I was like, well, if 80% of people do biology, I want to be different. And my senior year in high school, I really just got a love for chemistry. There was just, I couldn't get enough of chemistry. I was really good at it. It's something that just clicked with me. It was so easy. I never had to study for chemistry. You gave me a new concept. It just made sense. It was very intuitive to me. So I was like, I'm going into chemistry. That's what I did. So I did a chemistry major with a minor in biology. And I minored in English. Like I said, I was ultimately 3 classes shy of getting a degree, but on the pre-med track, that's what I did. And then coming out of that school, towards the end of that, going to medical school, I kind of wanted to get out of Miami for a while. I wanted something different. But I stayed in Miami, I guess, for the wrongest of wrong reasons, which was a woman. So I ended up staying in Miami for the woman I was dating at the time. But in retrospect, again, it was a phenomenal choice. The school is just absolutely phenomenal in their medical training. To this day, there's still things that I fall back on from that training. It's one of those few schools that we actually never wore short white coats. So in the medical world, the medical students usually wear the short coats, so you can see that they're not quite doctors yet. But we got the regular long coats from the beginning because the school wanted us. They didn't want to distinguish us. They said, no, you're going to be doctors. Act like a doctor. Be a doctor.
Yep.
And so we were thrown into that from day one. We were out on the ward seeing patients and being asked the difficult questions right from the start. So again, the training was amazing. And so I stayed for the wrong reasons, but ultimately it worked out exceptionally well for me.
Man, that's and so that program then, how long is that program last? And are you still excelling? Are you still kind of doing well school wise and enjoying the learning? Obviously, you said you were like really dug chemistry. Did you find yourself enjoying the work and the rigor of it, or how was that going?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So let me back up for a second just to explain why medical school was such a struggle for me. Coming out of high school, I didn't want to go into medicine. Everything that was around me, like my friends, my family, neighbors, every opportunity that presented itself to me in some way, shape, or form was somehow medicine related. So everything coming out of high school really was sort of pushing me in the direction of medicine. Everybody said it's great, great place to be, easy living, make tons of money, help people. And I wanted to become a jet pilot, actually. But I graduated in 2002. So my senior year is when 9/11 happened. And so everybody pushed harder on the medicine aspect and said, no, avoid aviation. And so that's why I ended up on this sort of medicine track. And I was like, fine, what does an 18-year-old know? As an 18-year-old, I didn't know shit from shit. So I was like, fine, I'll just do this and see where it takes me. So once I got to medical school, college was relatively easy for me. That was stuff that excited me, interested me, definitely excelled at that. And going to medical school then was the first time academically that I struggled because the content didn't really excite me all that much. And I just was not engaged. And it was hard just to survive those 4 years of medical school. And and I think it goes back to I didn't want to do medicine in the first place, but here I was. And so I know I got through it. It wasn't easy. And I actually went into medical school thinking I wanted to do emergency medicine. And the idea from that, for the most part, came from the fact that, again, through all my previous experiences and exposures with the medical system, it had always come sort of connecting with the emergency room in some way, shape, or form. And I like the idea of sort of a fast-paced environment. You don't have these long-term relationships. You just kind of fix a problem, you move on to something else. And I like the idea behind that. When I got to medical school and saw the other side of it, I realized actually that's not where I want to be at all. And so I had a bit of a crisis moment now, because at the time that we needed to start thinking about what specialty we were going to apply for our residency programs after medical school, I had already joined the Air Force on the scholarship. And so not only did I have to go through the civilian match to match into a residency program, but I first had to go through a military match to meet the military needs for various specialties. And emergency medicine actually is very competitive, or was very competitive for sure back then. I don't know if it still is. I mean, that was 15 years ago now. So I did not want to do emergency medicine, and I didn't know what else to do because that's really all I knew. And the only thing I knew for sure is that I did not want to become a surgeon. And so during our third year, during our core surgery rotation, I ended up choosing the pediatric surgery elective, because out of the 4 electives we could choose, that was the one that anybody who didn't want to pursue a surgical career would choose. It was not the bad hours, the attendings were nice, you wouldn't get yelled at. There wasn't as much stress. It's just like you did your 4 weeks, 6 weeks, I don't remember how much it was. Yeah. And it was pretty easy going. Well, the first day on that rotation, the attendings, again, super nice. There was like, here, place a central line. It's like, I have never done a central line, let alone on a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
But they walked me through it, and I like the physical aspect. I like working with my hands. Woodworking is one of my hobbies. I like doing things with my hands. And so I started to fall in love with surgery during that rotation. Again, because something I hadn't been exposed to before, I knew nothing about. And now having that experience, I was like, you know what? Actually, I do want to do surgery. And so I ended up changing from emergency medicine to general surgery, especially with a military match, last minute. I already had 2 emergency medicine rotations set up with the Air Force. And I changed them within like 30 days before I left to general surgery rotations. And I was able to do that, which was awesome. And so I ended up matching with the military into general surgery, which then allowed me to go into a general surgery residency afterwards. And that was also just sort of a good experience in retrospect. I really don't regret that at all. It was very rigorous, long hours, very stressful, but surviving that really creates a different mindset inside of you. You have different perspective now on things in life, and also a very different skill set than most other people do. Some other people have. So it's something that I hadn't planned on at all, but it ended up working out in my favor, I would say.
Pardon the interruption, everyone. Do you ever feel like you're out of alignment with your true gifts, your passion, and your purpose for being on this earth? Do you feel like you're grinding it out each week with the appearance of success and still asking, is this it? If so, I get it. I've been right where you're at. And once I figured it out for myself, it's why I started coaching. Now I help my clients get back into alignment with their authentic self. I help them find meaning, purpose, joy, and energy in each day. Check out my website at ericsardina.com to learn more and to schedule a free 15-minute strategy session. And now, back to the show. So how does that work? So the military piece, right? So you mentioned the Air Force. So was this like an ROTC thing where they were helping to pay for the school and you owed them some years of service then? Or what was that military commitment about?
Yeah, so similar. ROTC, you're on a track to become commissioned. With the health profession scholarship, you get a commission. So even in school, I already had a rank. Even going to my officer training, I already had a rank, which was funny because everybody in that basic military training was an officer. We were all doctors, lawyers, dietitians. But all the people that trained us were enlisted. So rank-wise, they were below us. But there was this known understanding that these people knew more about the military than we did. So even though we outranked them, they could still yell at us. Now, theoretically, they couldn't say, drop down and give me 20 push-ups because of the rank difference. But they could push back a little bit. And that was just a matter of respect and understanding that these people, even though we theoretically outranked them, had way more time and experience with the military than any of us did. So I came in my freshman year, my first year of medical school was on my own dime, and met a recruiter for lunch. She brought Papa John's. The pizza was great. And I realized if I go into the military and they pay for school for the 3 years that I would owe on active duty, cost wise in the long term, I wouldn't really see much difference in my income. And I would also have the opportunity to possibly travel the world, which always excites me. And so it was sort of a no-brainer for me was to join the military because of the opportunities it presented. And I didn't have to worry now about the paying for school, paying for supplies. I got a stipend every month. The only thing that kind of sucked was the year after I joined, they started doing a $20,000 sign-on bonus for medical students, which I missed out on. And so that was kind of sad. But so they paid for the last 3 years of medical school, which then meant once I was done with my residency, my surgical training, I would owe them 3 years on active duty.
Yep. And so when that happened, did you then deploy, or where were you stationed? Kind of what did that Air Force experience look like?
Yeah. So that was also a very, I would say, bizarre experience. So I ended up being stationed at St. Louis University in St. Louis, Missouri. Yeah. And what the Air Force has, they have 3 trauma training platforms, really 2 for most of it. But there's one in St. Louis and one in Baltimore, let's say. And all the medical personnel has to go through one of those centers every 2 or 3 years to be caught up on trauma before any deployments. And so we were a trauma training unit for all the medical personnel in the Air Force. And we were fully ingrained with the civilian staff at St. Louis University. Now, St. Louis, until last year, was the city with the highest homicide rate per capita in the country, which is why the Air Force is there. So a ton of penetrating traumas. Now, the interesting thing about this is St. Louis University is a level 1 trauma center with the types of traumas and injuries they see, would not hire someone like me who came out of a civilian general surgery program from a level 2 trauma center without any trauma experience. I did not do a fellowship in trauma critical care at the time. I came straight out of residency training. So on the civilian side, St. Louis University would have had no interest in me. Yeah. I only was there because the Air Force put me there. And the Air Force only put me there because no one else that year wanted to be in St. Louis. So they had empty spots to fill. And, I was at the bottom of the pile of papers they went through because I had no time at service, no experience. Yeah. And so I was one of the last few people that got an assignment. And like I said, nobody wanted St. Louis. And so I ended up in St. Louis, which again turned me, was this incredible fortuitous opportunity to do something that I otherwise would not have had the opportunity to do. So I saw some just incredibly violent trauma, to be honest with you. Yeah. And on the one hand, that was the best job I ever had and also the worst job I ever had. I mean, that job completely destroyed me mentally, emotionally, and physically. And it didn't help, for example, that I went, I got married during my residency. And so, I spent more time at the hospital than I spent with myself. And so I always, I always joke that I was cheating on my residency by having an affair with my wife. Yeah. So we had sort of a poor start into our relationship to begin with because I was never around. And now we went to St. Louis together. And that was very stressful and demanding and in very different ways. Did I have more time at home? Yes. But I needed a lot more time to decompress that I didn't even fully understand at the time for myself. And so we ended up getting divorced, which is how she ended up moving here to Toledo. She's from the general geographic region to be closer to her family. After my 3 years in St. Louis with the Air Force, I stayed at SLU actually for another year, which was a pretty awesome gig. I was doing, on the one hand, I was doing the critical care fellowship that I didn't have, that I should have had before I got there. Yep. And then I also stayed on as staff to take trauma call as well. So I had sort of this hybrid position where I was both a fellow and the attending, which was a pretty sweet gig for me. But I was doing the long distance dad thing. And that was just terrible for me. So I ended up moving here to Toledo to be closer to the kids after that was off. And so that's how I ended up in Toledo. I'm not here by choice. If I had by choice, I would go back to Sunshine Beach and Palm Trees somewhere. I would not want to be here in the Ray Florida, right? Ohio. Yeah.
Right on. Right. Okay. And so I know we talked early in the bio about mental health showing up in the family and having some sort of, some mental health experience with mental health stress, mental health / disorder. Talk a little bit about that and maybe how that sort of overlays with the stress and the trauma that you're dealing with in going through the program you are, and then your marriage and some of these other things that kind of are manifesting.
Yeah, sure. So I would say by the time I got to St. Louis was the first time in my life for a very long time, really since high school, that I had nothing really to work towards. Right? It was. I wasn't trying to get into medical school. I wasn't trying to get into residency. I wasn't trying to get a good spot with the Air Force. I literally just was there and had time to think for myself. And that was the first time that I actually realized for myself that I had depression. And I was looking back at my life at the time, and I had suicidal thoughts, even some plans along the way. I would say my first 2 years in college were especially dark. I remember the freshman dorms, they no longer have these towers, but there were 12-story high towers. My room was on the 11th floor. And I remember standing on the balcony at night, sometimes thinking about jumping off the 11th or the 12th story. And I never did. But the thoughts definitely occurred. But I never had enough time to really think about that. There was always something to keep me busy, which really, if anything, I was just avoiding dealing with it. Yeah. So now I finally had the time to start dealing with it. And I started having some acute episodes even where I would, either stay in bed all day, or I would crawl under a desk and just didn't want to come out, or hide behind the couch. I mean, it was awful. So that was the first time I actually started seeking out help. I went to see some mental health specialists. I'd been on since then on 7 different antidepressants. I never liked any of them. I always had side effects, or they didn't really do the trick, or they kind of just evened me out to the point where I had no emotions at all. I went through therapy, and that never really did the trick for me, because everybody always wanted to talk about my mother. And I was like, can we please stop talking about my past? My past is done. I can't change it. I want to move on. I want to know what I can do today to create a better future for myself. And the therapist just couldn't help me with that. They always wanted to talk about my past. And I was like, don't worry about my past. That's done. I can't change that. And I'm okay with that. And it wasn't until now, really, 2022, sort of the 22, 23 turnover, where I found coaching. And the idea that I could talk with someone, what it would take for me to get from today to tomorrow and beyond, was just mind blowing, right? I was like, holy crap, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been trying to talk to my therapist about for years. Why didn't they tell me about this? And that was that completely changed my life, because I was finally able to talk with someone who also understood that the past is the past, and we're trying to move into the future. Right? How do we make today better so that we can make tomorrow even better and beyond? And so that's where I discovered the power of coaching. And I will tell you that one of the reasons I discovered coaching so late was my parents always talked about coaches as swindlers and snake oil salesmen. And who needs one of those? All they do is take your money and tell you to be happy. And so that's the mindset I had for the longest time. And it wasn't until somewhere in 2022 that I discovered coaching for myself, that I was like, what is this coaching thing all about? And that was also through a very bizarre occurrence. So I was unhappy with my job, and I was trying to find my way out. And like most people who were looking for the way out of a job, I found real estate. And I was listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast, which is Bigger Pockets is a large real estate community. And Brandon Turner was the host of the podcast. And he was talking about his coach, Jason Dries, and how Jason just completely changed his mindset about something. And my initial thought was, again, like, why does he need a coach? This is a multimillionaire who's, obviously created a life for himself. What does he need a coach for? Why does he pay someone like that? But that thought triggered my curiosity and said, well, why does that multi-million-dollar real estate investor hire a coach? What does that coach do for him? If he's already so successful. And so that led me to Jason Dries and to coaching. And that's really how I discovered coaching and the power of it. And when I discovered that, I went full in. I said, you know what? This is actually what I need to do for other people, because and this is a major topic on my own podcast right now, is trying to open up the world to what coaching is, because I had such a limited mindset to begin with. And I think there's a lot of people out there who truly don't understand what coaching is and what coaching could be, and the transformational changes you could have through a good coach. And so that's how I discovered coaching. Like I said, I went full in, and I joined Lumia then to become a certified life coach myself. And that just changed me even more. And I can tell you that the person I am today is not the person I was 2 years ago. And that really is primarily because I discovered coaching for myself.
Yeah, it's I appreciate you sharing that. And what's interesting to me there is the perception that we can take from someone else's perception, right? So your parents had a perception that coaching was snake oil, likely because they had some experience, or they heard of somebody else's experience that perhaps was snake oil, or someone that wasn't really good at their job. And so then it became all coaching is snake oil. And so you kind of adopt this idea that, well, it must be snake oil. And yet you shared early in our talk that your mom was talking to a psychic, right? So a psychic was valuable, right? But a coach is a snake oil salesman, right? So it's interesting, though. I mean, again, we pick up the things that we want to invest in or believe in, and the things that we don't. But then, as people, as young people, or even older people, we adopt often a perception based really not on our own perceived goods and bads, but on someone else's that's told to us. And we hear that and we think, well, that sounds terrible, right? Or that sounds great. So that must be a good thing. That must be a bad thing. And we're really just basing that judgment off someone else's experience, right? Rather than our own. And I think often we need to maybe tap the brakes when we're taking a very strong view on something. Is this really a view that I've formed of my own experience, or am I just taking it from someone else's experience that they've shared with me? And so do I want to go all in on that, on that belief, or do I want to maybe just take it as something, as a nugget for consideration, and then do my own homework, right? But that's what kind of struck me there. Was it's interesting that your impression was based on your parents, and that those same parents were the ones that were following a psychic, or at least one of them was. And a lot of people listening to the show would be like, probably when they first heard you say that, oh my gosh, I can't believe they moved from Germany to Florida because of the advice of a psychic. And yet, right. So it's just interesting to see that. But all right. So I think what maybe is going through some people's mind as they're listening is, man, you have invested so much time and energy and money to become a trauma surgeon. It's not even that you went through medical school, which is tough and long and rigorous, but then the additional teaching of surgery and being a surgeon to come to the conclusion of, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go be a coach. Talk a bit about any cognitive dissonance that may have happened there. Again, a fancy word for conflict, or, grappling with something in a decision that, can one thing exist without the other, or in spite of the other, and how that kind of, how that you were still able to, or that you came to the conclusion that it was the right move for you to step out of the surgery world into becoming a coach.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously that's the elephant in the room. I get that. So it goes back to the idea that I never wanted to go to medical school in the first place. And so I never had a love for the job. I never had any passion for it. I just did it because it's what I've always done. And yeah, sure, it's a very specific set of skills that I have, that I acquired over many years and many hours, and obviously many sacrifices have been made. But I was never really in love with it. And medicine, from the time I started this journey, about 20 years ago to now, has changed dramatically. Most of my day-to-day nowadays in the clinic is really just hacking away at a keyboard so that my employer can bill the insurance company. I'm not actually spending time with people at all. And that's really, I'm really just an expensive data entry clerk. It's all about documentation. If it's not on a computer, it didn't happen. And so it takes away from the human element of actually caring for somebody, having that conversation. And that's where coaching changes very dramatically, because it's all about the human experience, getting to know someone, getting the time to really know them and understand them, and then helping them. I love helping people. And that's one of the rationales that I really stayed with medicine for as long as I did. But I'm not able to help people the way I want to help people because of all the constraints placed on me by the system. All this documentation stuff. In medicine nowadays too, they're really getting away from that human element. I'll give you just perfect example. My girlfriend asked me the same question. Why would you ever leave surgery? You make so much good money, why would you become a coach? Well, she was in the hospital last week with a pretty serious abdominal problem. Like she had an acute abdomen, something that is really a surgical emergency that I know too much about for my own comfort. And now she was in the hospital with that. She was the kind of patient I would normally get to see in the hospital. And the problem was that none of the tests confirmed any of possible diagnoses. And so she was left without a box that she could be put in because nobody knew what her diagnosis was. And I ultimately, just because I listened to her and I was there and I really tried to figure out what was going on with her, ultimately came up with the diagnosis for her. And it had nothing to do with any of the tests. It had everything to do with me sitting there and listening to her and seeing how she was struggling and where her pain was and how her pain changed. And none of the other doctors did that. None of the nurses did that. Everybody just walked in and said, well, your tests were all negative. As a matter of fact, when she went first to the ER, they gave her a shot of morphine. Her CT scan came back as normal, and they were going to discharge her. And I said, how is pain that requires morphine? You are totally fine.
Right.
I mean, how does that make sense to anybody? Just because the CT doesn't show anything doesn't mean you don't have a problem. And again, think about it just from a very basic fact. If pain requires morphine, that is not normal. Right. And so for them to even consider discharging her straight from the ER, I said, nah, this is not normal. I mean, first of all, if you had actually paid attention to her, she would have told you she doesn't even like to take Tylenol for a headache. And now she requires morphine for abdominal pain. I mean, there's something very serious wrong here, and you haven't figured it out yet, but you're saying she's totally fine. And that's one of the big problems I have with medicine. We're putting so much emphasis on what's in the computer and test results and spreadsheets, rather than actually listening to people, understanding their problems, and figuring out the answer. And I can't do that in the system that we have. And so besides my own lack of passion for the job, I wasn't able to get that human connection going the way I wanted to. And yet in coaching, I can. And so for me, I was like, you know what? I'm done with medicine only because I can actually help people and have those connections and get to know people on a much deeper level on the coaching side that I'm not able to do on the medicine side. And so that's really ultimately what broke the camel's back for me. And I said, I can't do medicine anymore. I don't care about the money. Really, to me, it's about those deeper human connections. I like helping people, but I could do that on the coaching side. And I could probably do that even better on the coaching side because I can spend the time with people and listen to them and understand them and develop a plan, as opposed to hacking away at a keyboard for 10 out of a 15-minute visit, just so I can, my employer can build the insurance company.
Right on. Yeah, man. So a few things come up for me there in that what you shared there. One is what you're really describing is anybody that has made a significant life pivot, right? Whether you're making a life pivot from the world of medicine where you've invested time and money and energy and years to a new thing. It's no different really than someone that's invested maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years in the military and now is saying, I'm no longer going to continue in the military. I'm going to come out and join the civilian world and figure out a way or figure out a new thing that I'm going to do, or someone that's moving from, some other corporate role that maybe they've had, like me. I spent 30 years in corporate America and then made a pivot into the world of coaching and running this podcast and some other things that I do. And so that required a big change. And I walked away from years and time and energy and money and all those things to pursue something different. And so really that making that leap is the struggle that anybody that's making a big pivot has to grapple with, right? Is this the right thing for me? Am I making the choice that's more in alignment with what I believe I was built and created to do? And so it's really, it might on the surface, people might go, oh my gosh, trauma surgeon, how do you give that up? But that's really of anybody that's making a major change in their life has to come to those decisions of giving something up, leaving to start a new adventure in another realm. That's one thing. The other thing that came up is what you shared around medicine, having had some experience in working in healthcare companies. It is a common refrain of doctors that they are not allowed to spend enough time with their patient. They are they are strapped around this, the grinding wheel of insurance and CPT codes and making sure they code things right so they can get paid, and not getting paid, or getting paid for something one way, but then it's getting clawed back and they're having to pay that back to the insurance company later because they did something wrong. And just this frustration over the lack of ability to really do what they got into medicine to begin with, which was to treat patients and interact with patients. That was their ideal. That was the movie they had running in their head. And when they got in there, they found out it was not that. They were only getting to spend a small percentage of their time with patients, and a much larger percent being business people and coders and computer programming, all the things that you just mentioned there. Very, very common to create that disillusionment with the whole notion of practicing medicine. I think some just are like, well, I'm just not willing to change. This is my lot in life. I'm sticking to it. Or they come to that. I think it's a factor of the modern medicine situation. I think if you look back 30, 40 years ago, maybe doctors did spend a lot more time with their patient. The idea of insurance and the role that it plays was much smaller. I think it was, back when I was a kid, my parents talked about having major medical, like they would get what was called major medical as opposed to insurance. And really you only used major medical for things that were major. Other than that, you were self-pay, right? You went to the doctor, you paid a reasonable fee. The doctor treated you. That relationship existed between you and the doctor. It didn't involve this ominous role that insurance now plays in this, as the intermediary between physician and patient. And so it's unfortunate, but yeah, those are the things that really came up for me. It's very understandable what you experienced. It's certainly not unique. It's just I think the willingness, the courage, the motivation you have to say, no, I'm not good with it. I'm going to make a move here.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to something that you said earlier. It's what's my purpose, right? Mm-hmm. What's the meaning? I really like. Let me see. I don't remember the name. Arthur Brooks. Who says that happiness is a combination of enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. Well, I didn't get enjoyment, satisfaction, or meaning out of my job, and so I wasn't happy. Right? I mean, I was burned out on my job on top of my baseline depression. So yep. That was just. I had to figure out for myself, where is my purpose? Where do I find meaning? What do I get satisfaction out of in my life? And if that requires a drastic change, I'm willing to do it. I'm still young, I just turned 40. There's still plenty of road ahead of me to figure this out and to enjoy my life. Right? There's no reason to wait and waste your time if you're not happy. We can all make those changes, but it takes courage. It takes energy. It takes definitely a little bit of grit to make that happen. No doubt.
For sure.
But, if you think about my life, even until now, that's all my life experiences have been, right? We're just grinding through something hard. And so it was a pretty easy decision for me at this point. It's like, I've done it before. I can do it again.
Of course. What's next for you, Felix? What are you excited about? Kind of what's on the horizon for you that you're going to go off and pursue?
Yeah. So obviously my coaching practice, I love that. I love working with people and helping them find meaning and purpose. The two areas that I've really come into lately that I've been just having tons of conversations with people about that I've really come to enjoy is networking and leadership. And in combination of all that, what I also realized is that I believe it or not, I'm an introvert. If you go by Simon Sinek's definition, I'm an introvert. And I noticed most of my clients over the last year have been introverts as well. And so I've actually come to realize that introverts make fantastic leaders. They just don't know how. And they struggle to network. And so if I can help more introverts discover their meaning and purpose in life, to give them the energy to learn how to network better and develop their leadership skills, the world would be a better place. So I'm working on that. I've got I published a book on the networking side of things to change the way we network, and that's been really well received on LinkedIn. And I actually made a connection with someone from Morocco, and we're now working on a book together on how to network better. So that's been fantastic, and I love to see where that's going to take us. And then, of course, my podcast. I've absolutely loved having the conversations I'm having, meeting other coaches. I'm hoping to have you on as a guest for my own podcast soon. But yeah, no, it's meeting these people that have themselves undergone some sort of struggle, come out through it, stronger on the other end, and now turning around to help even more people with the same struggles. That's been just absolutely amazing, getting to know these people on much deeper levels, who they are and what they do. That's been just honestly so much fun. And I can't wait to continue to do more of that. So I think those are the big things for me for 24.
Is the coaching that you do, is it one-on-one, or do you do group coaching, or both? Or
I'm open to group coaching. That opportunity has not presented itself to me. Actually, when I first got into coaching, I was really burnt out in my career. And so my first foray into coaching was focused on burnout. And I put together a whole program on burnout. And if you look at burnout, it's, the individual is suffering from burnout. I was suffering from burnout. But really what creates the burnout is the community you surround yourself with. It's your coworkers that really set you up for failure. And the reason that sets you up for failure is because of the leadership that creates the culture at work. And so knowing that, I actually put together a program when I first got into coaching that's specifically geared towards organizations for in-person group coaching at their place of work. That opportunity has not come across yet, but I'm open to it. Aside from that, I am absolutely doing one-on-one coaching with anybody who's interested. That's been so powerful. And like I said, I love getting to know people and understanding them on a much deeper level. That's been just so much fun for me, and being able to make a difference and helping people live a better life as a result. It's just so rewarding. I love it.
Awesome, man. Love that. Where can people find you and connect with you, man, and connect with your work?
My website, successvalk.co, is a good place to start. I'm most active on LinkedIn these days, although I have socials all over the place, Facebook, Instagram. But I would say the best place is LinkedIn. Felix Boecker. If you don't know how to spell my name, brokesurgeon.com is my link tree. So that'll link you to my website, my YouTube, my podcast, my LinkedIn. Brokesurgeon.com is an easy catch-all. But I would say the most active place I am on the socials is LinkedIn right now.
And what was your website? What was the success?
Yeah, successvalk.co. So Valk means factory in German. So it's the success factory.
Success. And when you say Valk, it's WERK, just like the.
Correct.
I got you.
Right. Because it's like I said, that's German. So that
yes,
trying to pay homage to my German roots there.
Well done. Man, great conversation. Really enjoyed it. Felix, appreciate you sharing so openly your background and your story, and just really enjoyed the talk and the time you spent. So appreciate it.
No, absolutely. This was so much fun. And I'm definitely an open book, because I feel like, especially as an introvert, as a depressed introvert, it's really hard to open up. And it's really through coaching that I started to open up and share my story more. And that's been so freeing. That's really been more therapeutic for me than almost anything else. And the only thing that's been more therapeutic for me is actually going to the gym and doing some extreme exercise. But that's been really just so freeing and freeing for me. And so I'm definitely an open book, and I'm willing to share any parts of my story with anybody that wants to listen to it. For sure.
Awesome, man.
So no, thank you for this opportunity. This is wonderful. I love connecting with you, and even on our previous talk, I mean, your life and my life have had so many bizarre similarities in our paths, right? Like the common themes have all been sort of the same, even though I'm a doctor, you're not, but
right.
Aside from that, the common themes of the struggles that we've had and the experiences that we've had, very similar. And so it's just awesome to connect with people like you and get to hear that I'm not alone in this world.
Absolutely. One of the number one things I love about the podcast is the relationships that I've formed through it and the people that I get to meet, just like yourself. So it's been fantastic. So I encourage, and we'll put all these links in the show notes so people can find you easily. And I look forward to being a guest on your show one day in the very near future.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that one.
Likewise. To our audience, thank you for taking time from your busy day to listen to the show. Always humbled that you do that. If you would write a review, give us a rating, share the program with a friend, all those things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast.